No.
I'm hearing something kind of loud.
Yeah, I'm hearing that too.
Okay.
Me too. I'm just on mute.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what's. Oh, that's loud. Sounds like a television, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I'm the only one home. I don't have anything on.
Somebody will be there.
Well, I just tried muted mine and I still heard it.
Oh boy. Well, now it's gone. Now it's back.
That's what I like to talk about.
Okay. Well, let's try to work through it somehow. Does somebody want to give the opening prayer?
I can.
Okay. Thanks, Carolyn.
All right. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you at this time with our class that you might help us through this semester. We ask Thee for Thy direction and Thy guidance as we learn about organizational effectiveness and management and leadership, and help each one of us that we may learn from one another. And we say this in Jesus Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Carolyn. One of the things we're supposed to do is give a quick synopsis of the case and then move on to discussion questions. Now, this hangout is not supposed to last more than an hour, so that kind of gives us room to work. If we're done in 45 minutes, I wouldn't feel bad either. So does somebody want to summarize the case real quick?
Yeah, well,
okay.
I mean, I can do it to the best. I've only read through it once. So, I mean, from what I gathered, Mary Griffin is the vice president of, Derby Foods. It sounds like she's over 6 brand managers. And one of the brand managers, who is Simon York, he basically he's new to being like a brand manager. Sounds like he worked his way up, and it's just kind of like a fireball employee. Kind of seems like he's someone who kind of takes the initiative and really has made things happen for this company in the past. And that's he earned a spot as a brand manager, but then as a new brand manager, it sounds like he's been really just like full of energy, excited, about his position, has really been kind of taken a lot of initiative and a lot of just like emotion into his job. It seems like some people are, and some of the other employees of the brand manager of Simon York have been offended by him occasions. And so one of them had approached, I think the person's name was something Shelburne, approached Mary Griffin and kind of talked to her about, him and just giving her a heads up. And so, but she had noticed a few things too, and is just kind of debating about how to speak to him, and just had set up a meeting with him to kind of just discuss, I guess, or give Simon York some feedback on, being a new brand manager and having like a big account and working. At least that's kind of, I guess, the general ideas of what I got. Hopefully that's, maybe close to what you guys were reading as well, or maybe I'm just off a little bit, but.
Oh no, I think you summed it up nicely.
Yes.
All right.
The only question that wasn't answered in the synopsis and the case was, how long has he been there? No, granted, he's been a new manager. He was just promoted. His predecessor had been there for almost 30 years. Blah blah blah. But has he had a chance to learn about the culture of the company? That's kind of critical. Is he a firebrand and does things his own way, or is he just unlearned? So.
That's a good question.
Yeah, that is a good point.
I don't know. He's still got stuff to learn, so that's probably the more important part.
Another good question would be: does he have any other management job? Like, has he ever been in a management position before?
Okay, yeah, that is a good point.
Mm-hmm.
The couple of questions that I wanted to go through, I kind of wanted to keep it kind of tight to the case study. One of the questions is, what is Mary's role in establishing the culture? at Derby Food? And what is Simon's role in maintaining and establishing the culture? So I kind of wanted to go there. One of the questions is, how is Mary supporting the corporate culture?
Was that the first question you just said, you asked?
Yes. Yeah. What is Mary's responsibility?
And
how is she supporting the corporate culture?
yeah. Well, so, I mean, from my perspective, so, I mean, I actually work for a smaller company and have been there quite a while. And so, well, actually, I've been there 3 years and the company's been around 5 years. So, but for the company culture, like the company culture that I have is really like, and I mean, I've been like as I was reading through this, just kind of comparing to my own job, right? Just because it's super intriguing of how a company culture really affects kind of your job and how you feel about it. But like what I've noticed is that like the director and the CEO have like, I mean, you can call them like the vice president just because like they're the only two like main managers at my company, but they have really like had to set like the example and really like carry that through everything with my company, like with all the other managers, all the employees, like they've had to set that example. And I just feel like that's my opinion, is that for her as like the vice president, she's someone that has to be that example of what the company culture is. And she also has to, like really like get that through to like the employees and specifically like the brand managers. Like brand managers also have part of that role in playing to make sure that the company culture is felt, that it stays, what they want it. And so she's also someone that has to, not only be the example, but also like help the other brand managers carry on that example of what the culture should be. So I just feel like she plays kind of a big role in like helping others play that role and also being that role.
Okay.
I don't know. What are you guys' thoughts?
I work in a very, very small office, and it's an office sharing situation with a bunch of attorneys. And I essentially, my supervisor has changed from one attorney to another. And the first thing he said to me when he took over was, do we really need to have yearly reviews? And I'd only had a couple of them because that's about how long I'd been in this company. I'd never had one before. And I thought, well, it's kind of nice to sit down and, get that feedback, one-on-one. But I said, well, it'd be nice. He said, how about if we go throughout the year, I come to you, you come to me when something comes up, and we'll just kind of keep it an ongoing thing. I thought that was great. So I get feedback pretty regularly. If I have concerns, I don't have to wait till the clock ticks. It's time for my review to address a problem. So I think Mary might learn from that by giving constant feedback, watching him, especially with this precarious situation that she's got to kind of correct or help him correct, is giving that feedback to him so he knows where he is and he knows, where the lines are. You want to move on?
Sure. Yeah. Well, what was the other question?
This is an interesting question. For this is still on Mary. How is she working against the corporate culture? I didn't see any evidence that she was. This problem was brought to her. She talked with this other guy, whoever he was, and by the end, her assistant had made a call to Simon to set up a meeting for the next day. So I really can't claim that she's being negligent in establishing and fostering and furthering the company culture.
Yeah, I don't really see. I mean, she handled the situation with Shelburne really well, but it didn't seem like she was doing anything wrong.
I'm on. Hang out. Excuse me, just one moment.
Okay.
No.
Please, I have to go.
Sorry. I'm
That's
trying to
okay.
chase my children off.
Yeah, I think I agree with you guys. Like, I really like. I'm trying to look for anything. Actually, I still have it open here in one of the tabs, trying to like look through it. Like, I really, you don't really see anything that would show that she is working against the culture at all. So I mean, really like nothing that you can tell. At least, I mean, maybe I'm missing something, but I agree with you guys.
Yeah, I mean, to
Well,
me,
and
it seems like she she handled with Shelburne well, and she's thinking about how she can talk to York and fix the situation. And it seems like she's kind of going along with everything in a positive way.
Well, and there's not even a real definition of what the corporate culture is. I mean, to me, logically and just basic consideration, human to human, for him to go to another department and start telling them how to do their job, what's wrong, how they need to straighten up, I can see why Shelburne came in and said, you need to tell this guy to straighten up. He needs to color within the lines. And he needs to know where his limitations are and where his authority begins and where it ends. It's certainly not in the production department. So that was the grossest error that I could see. And just common courtesy says you don't do that. So that's the only clue we got, I think, to what the corporate culture was at Derby Foods.
But do you think because he was, he had just gotten this promotion within, it looks like he has been there for a little while and he has, been a co-branding person, and that was kind of why he got the position that he got. Do you think that kind of just put her in a situation of she had worked with him on a different level, and now all of a sudden, because he's ruffling feathers with others, that it caused problems?
It could be. And I wonder if he's trying to, present himself and try to establish himself.
Well,
but
he
crossed the line.
Well, he crossed the line, and when you read down in the last paragraph, he is trying to replace somebody that's been at that capacity for 27 years.
Yeah. Well, and to a degree, is it possible, if you think back to the Ricardo Semler case study we did last week, it says too that he tried to introduce new ideas, new concepts to the former manager. And so it sounds like he attempted to infuse new blood, new ideas, which is good. That's really good. But he needs to, like I said, color within the lines. He needs to keep it within his department. And I think there was a problem too with the brand managers meeting when the calculation error was known in that meeting. It wasn't caught ahead of time. He kind of got tense, and it didn't need to be. So I think he's just trying to do things differently, too harshly, too quickly. I mean, he seems to have a kind of a coercive management style right now, which I think is really overkill for Derby. They seem to be a well-oiled machine, and he needs to find out how he fits into that well-oiled machine.
Right. And I think I'm kind of like you. He's struggling with being able to find that.
Yeah.
I personally thought he had more of a pace setting style.
Okay.
He had a high standard, and when people weren't living up to that high standard, he became a little bit confrontational about it.
Okay, that could be, yeah, you could see that, yeah. Okay. Something that I was thinking about as looking further down the road after Mary's meeting with Simon, whenever that was going to be, toward the end, it kind of left it open. And we're supposed to come up with the case study review. I wondered if it would be valuable and how Simon would even handle it if his team was allowed to give him a review. Normally, the bosses give it to the subordinates. Well, in Ricardo Semler's case at Semco, he encouraged the employees to review their bosses. Well, would that be a valid tool for Mary to use with Simon, or would he find that challenging and usurping his authority?
I think you would find it challenging from what you're given about his personality,
Mhm.
but I think it would be a good tool because then he's getting other people's perspective on his work style and his management skills that would allow him to hopefully become a better manager.
Yeah, I think the real linchpin is whether or not, first off, does he recognize, can Mary get him to realize he needs to change his management style? And two, does he feel that's valid? Because if he feels he's doing a bang up job, we're dead in the water. He's dead in the water.
Yeah.
And I think people are going to get really frustrated. So he's got to want to change.
Yeah. I think that, question, I don't know if I feel like I know enough about, Simon York to really make a good decision on whether, that would be a good idea, just because I feel like there are some people who, like, I could see some of the traits that he has where he would be someone who's maybe doesn't take feedback well. And at least from like people who he's over, and I think some people, need to get the feedback from the manager or from like their boss, right? So in this case, Mary. So I mean, it might be best for Mary to meet with his employees individually and talk to them and get the ideas first, and then meet with Simon and give him the feedback that way. I mean, but otherwise, he could be someone who has that personality who takes feedback really well, and just like that would be a great option. I guess I don't know if I fully know what he's like to make a good call on that, but I think it's definitely a good question to consider.
Yeah, because I mean, he probably thinks he's doing a bang up job, and he may not see the warts. But I agree with you, Ryan, that there are a lot of missing pieces that I wish could have been in here a little bit. So, looking back at this, go ahead.
When I look at, when you read the, on Simon's part down there at the bottom, he said, he wanted to use the meeting to discuss how to ensure the production team delivered on its promise of quality and precision. That's what he was doing. I think truly he was trying to look out for the business and what he thought that they needed, as far as branding goes with, the X Games, and making sure that it stood out enough on the product when it hit the shelf. And, maybe he just took a little bit of a wrong approach to the way he needed to do that, because it said where she thought that maybe the other gentleman had potentially just made the wrong, maybe he was blowing it too much out of proportion to what it really was. And York was just trying to do his job so that his new position wouldn't be in jeopardy with the job that he was trying to do. And maybe, the other gentleman felt like York was stepping on his toes. Or
I think that's a valid point. I mean, because if I don't know why Simon felt he needed to go down to the production department when he's a brand manager. Mm-hmm. I mean, if he was really concerned about it, I wonder if he could have handled it with his peer, the manager of that department, one-on-one on the phone in a quiet, polite setting, rather than going down there. Because if I was the manager down there and all of a sudden somebody else came in and started telling my team what to do, I'd say something, and it wouldn't be nice.
Yeah.
So, but I think he's got it set in his mind with that last part that, yeah, he's a go-getter and he's got this company all straightened out.
I think part of it stems from that he has a lack of management skills, and he has the ambition and the ideas, but he doesn't understand that his new position as a manager is different than as an employee, as just a regular worker. And so I think that's where part of it is that he doesn't really understand where his job is, basically the boundaries of his job. And so I think he took it too far, thinking that, well, I'm a manager, then it's okay to go do it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, looking back on Stephen Covey's book, no, not Stephen Covey's, the Harvard management document we read last week. Hopefully, you would hope that of the management styles, Mary's got coaching down, because I think that would be a really, really good opportunity for her to sit down, and even with the feedback and coaching workshop PowerPoint that we looked at, role playing and doing those kinds of things and correcting him and showing him where he can do better. But again, that's all going to go back to his personality and how is he going to handle that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's a real double-edged sword.
I mean, even though it seems like when you read it, he seems like he's a very good employee. And just like you said, Cheryl, you got to be able to make those adjustments and make those changes, and somebody to teach them and coach them to make sure that they're doing it right, because then it just ends up being everybody's mad and nobody's going to do anything. So in the long run, it'll end up hurting Darby Foods because no one's getting along.
Right. Or it's going to be he's odd man out and he's going to be ostracized and nobody's going to listen to anything Simon has to say.
Exactly.
Let me take a look here. This is an interesting question too. Going further, we're talking about what Mary needs to do to establish the culture. How is Simon embracing it and establishing it? But what about the team? It just says team members' role in establishing and maintaining culture. Because now we're talking about subordinates somewhere, either the people on his team that work under him in that brand management team, or maybe the production team that he railed on. Do they have an obligation to demonstrate physically to him what the corporate culture is? Can they say, dude, we don't work like that around here. If you got a problem, take it up with my boss. Leave me alone. Or, can you talk to me differently, more respectfully? I mean, is that a possibility for team members? Or do they go right to Mary?
I think they need to try. Oh, go ahead, Ryan. Sorry.
Okay, I'll go. I guess I kind of think that. Sorry, it's kind of loud. My opinion is that the team members on the production team, I just feel like it's best if they go to their own maybe production manager first and kind of explain their concerns to their manager, and have the manager go to York and kind of just make it a personal meeting where it's just kind of manager to manager. Hopefully that's more like on maybe York would feel more like comfortable in that setting, and also be more open to the feedback and just take it a little bit better that way. I don't know. That's just I was maybe one idea. One thought.
Carolyn, what did you have to say?
Basically, kind of what Ryan said, trying to, work it out, with the team members that, on the production line and so forth, them getting together and being able to, work together and also not be intimidated by, him coming down. I mean, are they going to be afraid every time he hits the floor? Are we going to get it again? Or is there a way to work this out and make it work? And, that might be part of Mary's job in, like we said earlier, coaching him into how to get along with others. It's not about getting to the top this way. We all got to work together to make it work.
Right. Well, and I wonder too, I mean, if he's talking with one of his own team members and the team member says, dude, calm down. That could maybe be defined or perceived by Simon as insubordination. If he goes down to the production floor and maybe two team members down there talk to him together, well, now it's ganging up, and there's no way he's not going to be defensive. So that could be a really, really difficult conversation to have either way. I do feel bad for his people who maybe can't talk to him or don't feel they can talk to him right now. They might be in the hardest position of all. Oh,
370.
let me see here. When this is talking about the feedback that Mary is going to get from Simon when they have their conversation, how should Mary approach the discussion she starts with Simon?
I think how she should start it off is telling him and talking to him about the aspects that so far have been good for the company. So talking about the breathing, the fresh, putting a new breath into the company and revitalizing the company and making it relevant to a younger audience, and kind of start, building them up so that when she does move on to, hey, let's talk about what happened and how you could do things differently, that she's already kind of brought him up in a way so that when he kind of, for lack of a better term, gets knocked down a peg, he's still up and not just down.
It lessens the blow, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, AJ. I think, starting out any conversation, you do want to provide that positive feedback when you're trying to give constructive feedback, just to let them know, listen, you're doing this great. This is been fantastic. Here's some things that I think could even make you a better manager. And some things to just be aware of, right? So I think as long as she approaches the negative things in a constructive and positive way, I think it would be a positive experience for him.
That's a great transition, Ryan. You've done all this and this and this. This is how you're good, and this is how you can get better. That's a great transition.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Maybe we just cover this a little bit. What are the key items that Mary should address with him? We covered, bring up what he's doing right. The new suggestions and how he's really got not control, but he's got a good team. Yeah, maybe we just did cover that, and then how he needs to what things he needs to work on, and how he can come to her, or whatever, for questions or suggestions or more feedback.
Yeah, I think. Well, so just one thing that I noticed is it just sounds like his delivery, or maybe it's his approach, but I think overall it's probably just his delivery on how he says things and how he. For example, in that meeting, it sounds like he says, "Thank God this is just an eternal meeting," and he goes on and just I guess when I read that, I kind of just imagined the tone was probably pretty negative, and so and maybe that's part of it. So I just think his delivery and how he says things much more positive. And if he says that, I thought it was great that he took responsibility initially, but then kind of making it just turning it just negative towards the end was just unnecessary, and was either not necessary or just could be said differently.
This thought just came to me. Is it possible that Simon is a little unsure and a little self-doubting about his promotion to this, and he's overcompensating by trying to come on as, you know, my way or the highway? Is he a little unsure of himself, maybe?
I can kind of see that, but I think that it's more of he's confident and excited about the new ideas and the fact that he's been promoted as a manager, that he thinks that he needs to do more than what he really should be doing, just
Okay.
because of the like overexcitement of it all.
Okay. Okay, that's a good point.
But do you think, because this is kind of, you know, his new position was, he was an assistant brand manager and he got promoted. So do you think he thought that the production floor just didn't care what it looked like? And, you know, he goes down there and sees that possibly what he wanted definitely wasn't what he wanted. So he was just trying to get his point across, you know, I'm branding this, I've laid it out. Now, how come you haven't done it the way I had it laid out?
He saw the production team as an extension of his team.
Right.
Yeah. I remember reading there somewhere where he was talking about how he sets a high standard and that he thinks that the production staff hasn't lived up to that standard, that they need to live up to the here we go. Ensure the production team delivered on its promise of quality and precision. And I think he took that, when he saw the mistake, that he took that as they're not living up to basically their end of this agreement, which could hurt the overall agreement with the Winter X Games. And so I think it was his passion that we need this deal with the Winter X Games to go through. And he kind of blew the situation up on them because he thought that, well, these are the high standards that I have set for myself and my team, and I think everyone else should live up to them. And this mistake isn't living up to those standards.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? We can go on to a couple more if you want.
Well, back to, you know, Mary, you know, having to have this talk, this meeting with Simon. You know, when I went back through and went through looking at what we read last week on the, you know, leadership gets results. And, you know, for Simon, he, you know, there's one in here called emotional self-awareness. You know, and it's the ability to read and understand people's emotions and so forth. And when you get a team of people together, because where I work, we have between 180 and 200 employees. You know, being able to, when you see something getting out of hand, being able to kind of step back from it before it gets completely out of control. I mean, I have sat in meetings where it can be positive, but just as soon as somebody says something negative about somebody else, it spirals really quick down to the bottom.
Down that slippery slope, huh?
Yes, it is, very. And, you know, when we talk about Simon and going down and going into another department, I think he needs to be aware of himself. And maybe that's something that Mary could work with on him when we talked about the coaching side of it, you know, being aware of himself and the way he's portraying himself to the other employees and management staff.
Well, that's an interesting point that you brought up, Carolyn, because the next question is, what are the most effective methods Mary can use to make their discussion productive? Mm-hmm. One of the thoughts I'm putting in my case write-up that I'm going to submit later tonight is, has he even read the company mission statement? Does he know what that is? Mm-hmm. So maybe that might be a good place for them to start. And then, you know, go from there. Make him aware of how the bigger picture is, and can he fit into that?
Well, sometimes, like I said, I'm not sure you've all of described your, places of employment, but lots of times when we promote within, it's sometimes really hard to, for those people that's worked with everybody else, they feel like they need to make themselves noticed. And sometimes, you just have to go back and realize, I still work with these people. We've got to get the job done, but we don't have to run them over to get it done.
Right.
So that's self-awareness, communication. I think AJ said earlier, being a pace setter, you got to, if that's, if there's something that you really want to work on, then you have to be able to help you along, because even though you're the manager and you've got that role, it's the people under you that make you who you are when it comes to management.
Very true.
They your employees can make you or break you. And normally when they break you, you're leaving because it's just not going to work out.
Yeah, that's like a football coach. I never understood how the day after the Super Bowl, all the coaches get fired. I thought, well, they did their best. Hey, if the team doesn't want to do what they're saying, well then, coach, what do you got? You've got to instill in them a desire to want to be led. Mm-hmm. So.
Exactly.
Okay, let's see what else we got. Oh, could be able to call this a game here in a little while. Describe the principles of effective feedback and how it applies to this situation. That's a tricky question, because it may not all be positive for him.
No.
And he may have to get with that.
It might, depending on the feedback, like you said, it might not all be positive for him. But if he takes what is not positive and works on it, then he'll get that work, being able to work with those other people, and improve himself.
Okay.
Can you say the question?
Take what's not good enough.
Yeah, this is the question. Describe the principles of effective feedback and how it applies in this situation. So let's break it up. What are the principles of effective feedback? What are those? And how does it apply to the situation with Mary and Simon?
Principle. So what's an example of like a principle? Like being direct?
Where is that PowerPoint?
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's 4 guidelines that I'm saying, like be direct, identify specific behavior, state impact, and caution. But those aren't are those the principles, or am I looking at the wrong spot?
Yeah, that PowerPoint kind of confused me a little bit. I didn't know if it was role playing or if it was actual notes from a workshop.
Yeah.
That was a confusing reading, and I'll have to go back and read it again. But let's. I'm going to move on that one. What is the recommendation that we would have to give to Mary or Simon for the discussion they're going to have?
Okay, wait, sorry. Say that one more time. I'm just processing things right now or something.
We're just about done, Ryan. It's okay.
It's been a long day.
Yeah. What is your recommendation for the discussion?
Well, I think for Mary that she needs to, take a step back and really like see the whole situation, because it sounds like she has, like seen different examples from before. And so I guess my recommendation would be that, I mean, she needs to approach it from a very like positive and building experience, especially with a new manager. You don't want to discourage him, especially when you can tell like he's really trying to like perform and do well. I think he's just making a few mistakes that maybe he's not aware of. And then just my recommendation for, I just forgot his name, Simon, is that he really like, I just think he just needs to be open to feedback. And it sounds like he would be from her, and really like needs to just implement it immediately, I think. I don't know if is that recommendation, is that, or is that just, I guess I don't know.
I think that really nails it. Yeah. That's yeah, it makes sense.
Alrighty.
Anybody else?
I think mine's basically very similar, of just building them up and keeping things positive and trying to just show him how what he did was wrong, but not just go, well, this is what you did wrong, but teach them, try to coach them how to be better.
Okay, yeah.
I think she could work on, some social skills like being able to communicate with them. How to send a clear, concise message without, using a tone. This is the way it's going to be, but being able to, communicate to them that it wasn't right, but along with, the coaching and the positive building and helping him to understand his new role as in the position that he's in now.
Yeah, if I can, sorry, I want to add one more thing. I just feel like for Mary, I think it's the most important for her to get this right. And so I guess I was just thinking that like she really needs to, approach it well and deliver it. I would recommend in the sense that like she really cares about his success, and just like, so it's not out of just like that she's heard about these things or that she's just giving the feedback, but it just needs to be like she cares about his success, because that reflects on her as well. But it's just about him doing well and is there to help him, succeed in whatever capacity. And so I think that's a really important piece of it.
Like taking a coaching style to approach.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would be my biggest take home for Mary as she prepares, is to put on her coaching hat. But she has to bring him along. She has to make him understand what the corporate culture is, and maybe how he behaved was contrary to that, and give him concrete examples. Telling him, oh, you need to fit into the company. Well, that's a big umbrella. But tell him, hey, when you went down to production and got in their face, that was a problem. This is why it's a problem, and this is who you should talk to, kind of thing. The problem with the accounting error, she may encourage him to have his team members submit their portions to him before a big meeting like that, so they can still contribute to him, and he can still feel that he has oversight over the project. Mm-hmm. And go through it and make sure all the T's are crossed and all the I's are dotted, so that there isn't an embarrassing situation like that. But give him specific, concrete examples of what the situation was and how it could be handled differently or why it was handled correctly.
Yeah, I think that's a great point.
But I think the only linchpin, I think there's more there. I think you were just saying this too, Ryan. There's more on Mary's plate for her to do. the biggest thing that I think Simon has to do is that he has to be receptive to the things they discuss.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he just needs to listen and be willing to accept what is said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh boy. Does anybody have any closing thoughts or comments or something that maybe we didn't touch on that you would have liked us to, or something that might be considered important?
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. I think
No?
we touched on.
No?
We do need to do when we finish up. We do need to do for our lesson planning for who's going to do the next lessons.
I'm out.
That'd be you, Cheryl.
I'm considering this time served, guys. I mean, I'll connect everybody. I'm so good with that. I can connect all this stuff, but leading the discussion ain't gonna happen. Ain't gonna happen, Cupcake.
Well, I think the leader is supposed to do the setting up and inviting.
I don't like you, AJ. I mean, if so, this is going to be one of those military things, right? Where we need a volunteer and everybody else steps back except the poor schlub who didn't get the memo. Hey, if you want me to do it, I'll do it. I mean, it's no big deal.
Well, I think it's supposed to be rotating between everyone.
Right.
Yeah,
We
Okay.
could.
Okay, I'm going to stop broadcasting. Okay, we can take this outside the
Okay.
recording arena.
Yeah,
So,
I think we're done with the lesson.
okay, I think this was a good first start. I think this was a really good
I do
first
too.
start, and I feel it's too bad that Benny and Mershawn couldn't be here, but and we'll get a hold of we're missing one other guy.
Josh,
Josh, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, but hopefully we'll catch them, yeah. So okay, I'm gonna end the recording now, and we'll just keep up this discussion here for a minute. Now it says here that I'm supposed to email this link to you guys, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that as soon as we're done. I'm also gonna submit the link to Sister McHenry. I believe I have to go double check, but I think this link needs to go to her as well, so that she can at least see who was in the group and who was in the discussion.
I believe we actually need to post the link into the discussion board.
Is the discussion board? Okay, well I'll take a look at that. But I'll send this to you guys. But I'm going to stop broadcasting now, and we can take our discussion private. So thanks a lot, guys.